Hey guys, welcome to my N90 Woods Li Ning racket review. I recently picked this up because I sold my N99. I always need a second racket with me. I actually just broke my strings playing yesterday on my go-to racket, my N93, and I got to play several hours with this racket, finally putting it through the test. I'm just going to go over quickly some of the details in the design, the graphics, and then I'm going to move on to my impressions with the racket when playing with it. So first of all, the very quick history. This is the original Lin Dan racket, if you don't already know by now. It's a N series, so it's the highest end quality racket you can get from Li Ning. And basically every 90 series racket that's is sold now is the successor of this racket. So I have basically owned all the 90 series rackets now that I've purchased this one. So the N90, and then I got the N93, and then I got the N99, and so I have had all three rackets. Let's talk about a little bit the design. It's a very sort of classic design. It doesn't utilize a lot of colors, and they even retain sort of the classic looking font. So if you look at the N90, it's a very sort of traditional classic looking font. The red is prevalent through most of the racket. The entire shaft is red. There are some very small circle details if you look very closely inside the red paint. You have these three arrows that just keep moving along the side. You have the letters that say Woods, because it's the Lin Dan Woods N90. And then when we get to the T, where the shaft meets the head, you have Li Ning in writing, again in a very classic type of font. This is different to their current lineup of rackets, because the current newer lineup uses the logo where the where the shaft meets the head. So that's a notable design difference. And then on the side here, you have some lettering that says HB shaft, and you have a serial number here that's engraved, that's etched. Not sure if you can make it out. So that should be something you probably look for in case you're afraid of a fake racket. It should have that etching on it. I bought this directly from Li Ning distributor in Canada. And then moving along to the head, we have some more of the gold sort of arrow accents on the bottom part. And the bottom half of the head is in fact red. And then as we move up is when we start getting, it transitions to some black streaks, lines, a little bit of white, some silver accents, and then at the tip it's black, and it says PCP, which is their reinforcing technology. Most of their high-end rackets have that lettering, and it's the same on the other side. So the design is a very classic look. It doesn't have many colors, doesn't have a lot of accents or pinstriping or chrome reflective materials like a lot of their newer rackets do, and it's not matte. So a lot of their newer rackets, like even the N92, which is one of their newest rackets, and the N72, they're utilizing a matte finish, which is very cool. I like that quite a bit. Hopefully I'll be able to try out an N7 or a N9 soon. So I have had this strung to 30 pounds with the Li Ning #1 string, strung by Li Ning. So it's a high quality stringing job, and I've decided to try to start using a more just rubberish grip rather than my towel grip. I just want to really focus to see on what is better. So most of my rackets are towel. My N93 is a towel grip, but I'm going to see how this starts to feel. It is odd for me to use this, but I'm going to try to get used to it. So I'm gonna just talk about my impressions of this racket. Relative to the N93, it feels definitely heavier. It definitely feels heavier, and it's not as head heavy bias. It's still head heavy racket, but it's not as head heavy bias. And that actually, it might not actually be heavier, but because the weight of the racket, it might be, the balance point might be a little bit closer to the grip. And also this racket has more flex than 93. So I believe those factors contribute into the racket feeling heavier, whereas it might not actually be heavier. It's always difficult to tell with Li Ning because their official specifications on their website always have a range. So it might say 85 to 89 grams, etc. So it's always difficult to tell, and they do weigh in differently from time to time on even the same racket. So that is how it feels. It's definitely less stiff, much less stiffer than the N99. It's much less stiffer than Yonex Z-Force, and this is the pre-ultra stiff shaft racket era. So in a nutshell, it feels, the shaft looks quite thick, and it feels like that as well. What that causes is when you're playing, the feeling that I get is you have it has really positive type of downward force motion. It gives you an excellent follow through motion, and that enables you to control your drops, and it really gives a nice smash with the follow through. I think that's what the most unique feeling that this racket gives, is that when you are swinging, it really wants to keep going. So it, in that sense, it's a very good racket for, basically it is a singles racket, but it is a really good racket for aggressive smashing. And I probably wouldn't recommend this racket for doubles, although obviously if you're an advanced enough player, you can play with any racket. As I'm not really an advanced player, but I was playing this with doubles. It is more difficult to play with this racket than it is with my N93. It is a little bit slower than my N93. However, I was smashing very well with this racket, and I was controlling those smashes very well. Probably better actually than my N93. I was very accurate, getting quite close to the line, and I could sort of control that where I wanted to hit a little bit better, and the smash was definitely a little bit harder. So for me, I could go either way. I could continue playing with this racket and adapt to this racket, or I could disregard this racket and continue playing with my N93. This is how close this racket is in terms of adaptability. So it's a really good racket in that sense, that it's such a great all-round racket. I'll almost say it's almost like my N93 in the sense that you could adapt this racket to your playing style. It can be either, whether you play singles or doubles, you can adapt this racket to your playing style. Because it does everything so well. Having said that, it is different from my N93, so they have very unique playing styles, and you're very unique to their own feelings to the racket, the N90 Woods, this one, and the N93. But having said that, they can both be adapted to. They are not biased to one type of construction. So a lot of rackets now are either super stiff and they're like that, or rackets are super light and then they're like that, and then they sort of restrict you in what you can do. But I put this into the category of an ultra high performance all-rounder, and it can perform at a very high level regardless of your play style. And it just depends if you want a racket that's a little bit more flexible, that has a little bit heavier feeling and doesn't have as much as a head heavy feeling, but has a great follow through feel. So I think it's because the flex of the racket is very flexible. Okay, let's see, I'm just very lightly pushing down and it's flexing quite a bit. And the balance point isn't quite at the top, so it snaps a lot. And when it snaps a lot, it means the force wants to keep going. So when you are smashing or doing any sort of drop, it has that really nice, it sort of almost guides your wrist with the bird, with your shot, and it encourages almost better form in that sense with this racket. Of course, if you time it improperly and you're following through and stuff like that, it might take you a little bit longer to recover because you have made a mistake on your part on the stroke of your shot. So obviously, there are good and bad things of the feature of this racket, but it's definitely it didn't feel bad when I was playing with this racket. You know, after playing I played 5 hours with this racket. So after playing with it that long, I never felt like it was really handicapping me, or I got used to it quite fast. As opposed to some other rackets, I really felt they were sort of handicapping me and I couldn't really get used to it. Surprisingly, I actually started getting used to this grip. I feel the reason why I use towel grips is not because I sweat a lot, but it's actually because I can adjust my grip much quicker in a towel grip, and I have really large hands, so I sort of just need a thicker grip to be holding on, and that is why I use a towel grip. It's hard to manipulate a racket for me when it's so sticky and when it is so thin, because I actually have really large hands. I mean, I wear extra large gloves, so I just keep that in mind. But overall, that is my review on the N90 in a nutshell. This is going to sound sort of funny, but the racket feels antiquated in a very good way though. So it's a very balanced racket. You can definitely adjust your playing style to this racket. It does not have a overly stiff shaft. It does not have an overly head heavy balance point. It does not have an overly grip biased balance point either. So it doesn't feel too light and it never feels too heavy. It has an excellent follow through feeling capability. The flex is definitely on the flexible side, especially relative to the rackets that are coming out nowadays. So this is an excellent racket, and I think a lot of actually national players are still using this racket, which doesn't surprise me. And I see a lot of advanced club players use this racket as well. Overall, I think this is a great racket. Actually, this classic design and look that Li Ning has retained with this racket, it has aged very well. It looks very good on the court, looks really good in your bag. And yeah, so if you are considering this racket, I'd say go for it. After what I've told you about it, if it suits, if you think you would like this racket, then pick it up. If you don't think you want something that's so flexible, because again, the one thing about this racket is it is flex, it's snapped, it's a really type of whip type of style racket. It definitely is not a stiff shaft type of racket. So hopefully I'll see you some time there, because this is a stiff racket, this is not. Okay, so yeah, that is my review. Hopefully I'll be getting some more Li Ning rackets or just rackets in general to review. And if you like this review, please like the video. If you want to see more of this, please subscribe. Thank you.